Hello, hi everybody. Could you please silence your phones? And just to let you know, there are two bathrooms, one on that side and one over here. Let's start. Good afternoon and welcome to the San Mateo Arboretum Society seminar on dog-friendly native gardens with Jennifer Dirking. We have over here a little mascot. I don't know if you can see it, the Zoom people, but this is little Peggy. This is Peggy.
Oh, there you go.
Peggy is a very sweet whippet mix, and very gentle. But so she's going to be representing the dog community today.
Taking notes.
Okay. Can they interrupt you during, when would you like them to ask questions?
It'd be great if you hold your questions to the end, because there's a lot we go through, and some of the questions you might ask would be the very next slide. But if it's something that's kind of germane and we can go through it quickly, then I think that's fine.
Okay, so this program will last for about 20 minutes, and it will be recorded. A few days after the presentation, you will be emailed a link to the recording and an evaluation form to provide feedback. So we are here. I'm Francesca, Archana, Kevin, Pat, and Sue, and we are volunteers. If you have any questions, y'all can ask us. Feel free to ask us. Before we start the workshop, some information. On your chair, there is an evaluation form, the orangey color one. And the other one is like a list of all the workshops that are going to happen. We would like to have the evaluation forms back because we use the suggestions that you give for our future workshop. So this workshop was actually recommended by somebody else. Last time Jennifer did a workshop, so that's why we're having it. The nursery shop is open on Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 3. You could go there and get some plants for your garden. They accept credit, debit, and Apple Pay. We prefer no cash. Also, there is a few demonstration gardens which you can visit. There is the Rose Garden, the Sun and Shade Garden, Hummingbird Garden, and the gorgeous Victorian Garden right in front. And the society also has this gorgeous cold pump house. They call it pump house. And it can be rented out if you have an event coming up and you're looking for a graduation party, engagement party or something. I know the other day there was what they call it,
baby shower.
The baby shower, baby shower, and it was a really beautiful day, and they had it outside. It was very pretty. You can take lots of pictures. Okay. So over here, there is a donation over here. If anybody wants to give us a donation, then there is the membership pamphlet, the Brick Tribute thing over here, and of course the newsletter. So this is Jennifer here, and let's take a look at her bio. Jennifer Dirking has been an organic gardener for over 40 years. Wow. But only recently in 2021, she transformed her garden from a food desert to a habitat oasis in her suburban San Carlos neighborhood. Inspired by Doug Tallamy's Nature's Best Hope, she has reached beyond her garden fence to develop partnerships and inspire hundreds of others throughout the Bay Area to begin their own native gardening journey. She is currently the chair of the Wildflower Ambassador Program at the California Native Plant Society Santa Clara Valley chapter. She is the co-administrator of the Native Plant Resource Team and moderator for the Next Door group, Bring Back Bay Area Bees, Butterflies, and Birds.
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah. So let's go ahead with.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Well, this is a new topic for me. I've got some dogs. My husband adopted some dogs. I say he adopted them because I said no more pets, and then I realized if I just say they're your dogs, then I don't have the responsibility. But we started doing native gardening, and then all of a sudden we were native gardening for dogs, and it was a very different thing as they started to dig, in the garden or eat things we weren't sure of. We thought we'd better learn something about native gardening for dogs and then share it with people because it is kind of a mystery. There's some plants you really should avoid that don't seem intuitive, and there's others that are fine. So anyway, so thank you all for coming. I'm really excited to present this. Actually, I'm going to back up just a little bit here. These are our dogs. Coco in the back, Billy in the front. That's in our front yard. And you'll notice they're on leashes. In our front yard, we have them on leashes, the streets nearby. And I have right next to them are some irises, which, as you'll find out later, are actually toxic to dogs. So we kind of allow those, we're growing those toxic plants. Another one's milkweed that's growing nearby. Because we do want to benefit the environment, and it's a garden for us too. But the dogs are on leashes. They're usually in a little bit more paved area when they're with us. So I love myself when I'm attending a seminar. I love an overview of where are we going. I love the roadmap. So here's a just quick overview. As you're watching these slides, think about your own dog, if you have a dog, or your friend's dog that you're helping with the garden. Their breed, their lifestyle, their activities, their instincts all kind of play into how you may garden with them. And then you're going to integrate that into your garden design. And when I say design, sometimes people get overwhelmed. They think, oh my goodness, she thinks I'm going to scrape my whole landscape and do something new. But it might just be a little corner. It might be the size of this area near this table where you just want to make a little cafe area in your garden and grow a couple plants around it and have your dogs hang out with you there. Understand the value of California native plants. This is something I didn't know till about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's changed my life. Like, this awareness has changed my life, and it's changed the landscape of my garden, but also just how I interact with it. It's been a huge transformation. We want to avoid plants that are toxic to dogs, and there's a whole range of degrees of toxicity. And so it gets a little complicated, but I'll touch on some of those nuances. Grow plants that are safe in case the dogs browse on them. So we're going to look at those safe plants too. And then there's also plants that they're going to go running through and step on, and some are tougher than others. And then there's some native grasses. Some native grasses have awns and they get into the dog's fur, or worse, into their snout, and it can mean surgery. And there's also some that don't, and they're really nice and dog friendly. So we'll look at some of those. Look at some ways to protect plants. We learned very quickly when our dogs started destroying our yard. And some fragrant foliage is going to be nice. And I always include resources. And for the note takers in the crowd, I also include at the end a QR code to all these slides and a link in case you're not into QR codes. And then I always encourage everyone, if you learned something exciting today, share the information with other people. Get out there and evangelize the things you're excited about. So consider your dog. Think about size, think about temperament, think about activities. I look at, the dog in the upper left is kind of lounging on some warm stones. This little puppy looks like he may have destroyed somebody's lawn. You've got a medium-sized dog. You got a dog with a stick who looks like he's really enjoying that stick. You've got a digger, and we discovered recently one of our dogs is a digger, and so we're mitigating that. And they just have this little cute white one down in the corner saying, "Please scratch my ears," or whatever he's up to. But there's different dogs are going to have different needs. This is our neighbor's dog, Piper. So I'm doing a few little dog profiles to help you think about it. Oops.
Okay, just some technical difficulty.
Oh, that's
people
okay.
On Zoom don't see the slides.
Oh no.
Sure.
Uh-oh. They don't want to sit through the whole talk without the slides. This is the best part, when cute Piper is getting her profile. This is a win-win, actually. Piper came over for her little photo shoot. My grandson, Charlie, is doing native plants as his topic for his 8th grade presentation at his school. And so now he gets to say he contributed to a presentation on dogs. We had so much fun with the dogs, taking pictures of them. So anytime we see Charlie Livingston, he's having a moment of pride there. But Piper here, can they see the slides now?
Yes.
Piper here, she's small, she's adorable. She's energetic, but she's not a digger. She's not destroying any plants. She likes to hang out in her front yard and visit with neighbors. And so she's a pretty easygoing dog. She's not really, we've also noticed she's not very interested in the plants. She doesn't really chew on them, or so she's not a high risk, we feel, for getting some poison plants. And she's here sitting in our front yard in front of our Louis Edmonds manzanita, which is a gorgeous plant. If you don't have manzanita in your yard, you have a sunny spot, that is a foolproof plant. I just adore it. So I'm going to advance to the next. Oh, now I'm not advancing. Oh, there we go. Here's Billy and Coco. I kind of prefaced this a little bit. These are our dogs in our front yard. Medium size, very energetic. And because there's two of them, they're chasing each other all the time. They're chasing through the yard. We need to protect the plants and create space like our front yard where wildlife doesn't have to fear for their lives. Like the squirrels are in the oak tree in the front yard and they're glad they're not around these dogs in the back. But the backyard looks great. They do browse grasses. So we planted some beautiful, but we're on the garden tour. We thought, oh, we'll have these beautiful Mendocino reed grasses in our backyard. And we planted them and they were chewed down to nubs in no time. And we could get frustrated and we could fence them off or whatever. And we thought, you know what? We're just going to plant, those are harmless plants and that can aid their digestion. We're just going to plant more. We're just going to keep planting it. I'm going to try them from seed because it's cheaper. But we're just going to let that roll. We'll protect the plants that we're really worried about. And then they love coming in the front yard. The oak tree's always dropping some sticks for them. And they love finding sticks and it makes a nice free toy for them. So anyway, that's how they roll. I want to add too that when they run through our backyard, they run off of our deck onto a pergola, right knocking into some blueberry bushes all the time. And we looked at how much joy they were having with this little circuit they were running. And we just pruned back the blueberry bushes. It's like, do I care more about the bush or do I care more about the dogs? I also don't mind if they eat blueberries. You know, I can get the blueberries at the store. So that's another profile. Jake, this isn't an actual picture of my friend Greg's dog, but he had a dog named Jake. As he got older, he just kind of wanted a place to rest and he wanted his food nearby and he wanted some shade, but he wanted some sun. And so there's also dogs that aren't going to race through the yard or do anything like that. They just want to hang out on the patio with the family. So looking at these various profiles, oops, should I say advance oh, there we go. Just look at your own garden situation when you think about how it's going to integrate with your dog. Do you have a big yard or a small yard? Where is the sun and shade so that you don't put up a resting place that's in too much sun if they're going to need some shade at some point or set up for both? Where is it wet or dry? That's going to determine your plants too, what you plant in your garden, what kind of soil you have. Where do you hang out? Your dog's going to want to be near you when you're hanging out in certain social spots. Where has your dog already created paths? So if you have dogs, they've probably run through the yard and already established some spaces. And then where are the areas that you want to keep the dogs out of? And there's some ways to do that. And then where are the areas you'd love to develop or improve right now? Maybe you're not thinking of a whole garden, you're just thinking of one little section. So this is one way to look at it. This is not a drawing that I did because my art skills are not that great. But if you think about the backyard is this top green circle here, and those are the dog-friendly, less toxic plants. You've developed a design that works for the dog. You've got some paths for them to run through. And you've got a yellow circle over there on the left where maybe that's a gravel area with some bunch grasses where they can go do their business. And you're not right next to where you have all your friends entertaining, you know, trying to do something and not smell, you know, dog business. And then there's the house. You can have some fences kind of blocking the access to the backyard. You can have that orange ring in the front yard. That could be all the plants that you want to grow that aren't dog friendly. You can have your dog be in some of the hardscape areas there, but generally have them on a leash and you can be flexible. The layout, you know, this is a nice example of a garden in the East Bay. When I went on the tour there, I saw that they had these really nice flat stones that a dog might like to sit or look around or get up high and perch on. They have an area behind those trees where the dogs can run and get, you know, have a perimeter that they patrol. And dogs really, I was surprised with our dogs, they really do that. They will go through a thicket to try to patrol that perimeter because that's their job. And I'm talking about dogs like mine that are like super intense. Maybe your dogs don't do perimeter patrolling. But anyway, and then sometimes a bench is nice. So a dog might sit on the bench or whatever. So it's a nice space. And then this is our front yard. We have a big sort of courtyard little area that has some chairs. And we have big, heavy umbrella stands. And so we'll tie the dogs to an umbrella stand and they can't pull that over. And if they're on their leashes in the front, they're pretty safe while we're doing gardening or visiting with friends. We have a little fire pit there. We don't chain them up near the fire pit. But, and you can see Billy and Coco they're always socializing. Whenever we're in the front yard, they're always, you know, kind of seeing who's going by, and they're very social dogs. And we have some tall pots. They're actually about this tall because native plants have really deep roots. I got them at Summer Winds Nursery in Palo Alto. And so I put some manzanita and some other plants in there. I don't want the dogs messing with them, so they're up out of the way. And that's something you might think about in areas where you do want your dogs and you also want certain plants. This is another area in our front yard. This is an entire yard that's about the size of this collective room. So I want you to know, like, this is not a huge property, but we do have an oak tree and we have a little quiet courtyard area. And this is actually where we started. When we started developing our garden, we're like, oh, my husband works from home. He looks out the window. We could have our coffee at this little table. We planted a bunch of native plants all around it. We put in a bird bath, and the wildlife just exploded because, as I'll mention later, the wildlife all comes for all the insects that eat the native plants they co-evolved with. And the insects feed the baby birds. And so the birds come because that's where they can find the food to feed their young. Suddenly that oak tree is full of birds, not just using the tree, but living in the tree. And there's western bluebirds and oak titmice and just a huge acorn woodpeckers. We have a whole variety of birds living in that tree. So it's really pleasant now. And the hummingbird comes zooming through because many of the native plants are very hummingbird friendly. And 80% of their diet is insects. And they're feeding that to their babies. It's 100% of their babies' diet. So nectar is nice, but they can actually live without it. There have been studies that showed in really lean nectar times, the hummingbirds just survive on insects. So what's nice about this spot too is the dogs can either hang out right with us near the table, or we have a porch nearby and we can put a big dog bed there and they can hang out, and it's a shady spot too. And again, we work in the garden and they can be with us and keep food and water accessible. Places to run. As I said, our dogs will go tearing through the yard. We prune things to accommodate them. We put some toys and sticks out there for them. And then we like gravel in parts of our yard because you don't get muddy paws. And that kind of space, the dogs will often do their business on gravel and it's easy to spot and pick up. It's not like you're doing some kind of a hunt in your yard. So that really works out great. This is another really beautiful example. This is a front yard on the East Bay Garden Tour that I saw. And they have a beautiful swale that creates a nice drainage in the wintertime, but it's also really attractively planted. And there's some dog-friendly grasses, those ones that my dogs ate. So I hope mine are so big someday. It has a sulfur buckwheat in the front that's a native plant. That one can be a little bit brittle. I think if this was my garden and I had a dog running through it, I'd probably put like a boulder or two near that plant to kind of protect it. But you can plant some really pretty wildflowers in a swale like this, and the dogs have a place to run, and they also have a place, if this could be the spot where they go do their business. And male dogs, I had never thought about this before because we have females, but they like to mark their territory. And somebody's just having like a post or a boulder or something, a log, then that's their spot to do that, and they feel that satisfaction of marking their territory. Not all plants were created equally, and so my focus today is really on the native plants that we have here, but the ASPCA has a list of mostly non-native, mostly imported plants, but a fair number of native plants, and whether they're toxic or not toxic, and for dogs, cats, and horses. And so when I go to the list for dogs, what's tricky is as you're scrolling down the page, it's really easy, all alphabetical. You scroll down and you might start into the non-toxic list and think you're still on the toxic one. So there's another feature to this. It has over 900 plants on the list. So I'll show you how you can search. There's some surprises on there. So people are happily gardening with their oleander all around and their tomatoes and their irises, and they don't realize like those are all on the naughty list. If you have dogs that might chew on them. So there's many stone fruits, apples, which we were happily feeding our dogs. And there's different degrees of toxicity. And so mint can be toxic to dogs, but in large amounts. So there's the ASPCA list is a good one to refer to. I wish they would add more native plants, so I'm going to break to them about that. But you can search. So here's, it shows, it's a little bit hard to see, it's a little bit washed out, but you can see how the top searches are actually sago palm, tulips, azaleas, lilies, and these are some of the worst plants. I talked to a veterinarian in my neighborhood. I didn't have time to add it as a slide, but she said actually in her practice, what she saw the most were mushrooms. The dogs are curious. It's an interesting texture. They chew on a mushroom. The mushrooms are actually very poisonous for many mushrooms for all of us. So now with that in mind, I'm gonna look at my backyard, and when I see mushrooms come up, they're a great benefit to the garden overall and helping to break down debris, but I'm gonna let them go in the front yard and I'm gonna take them out in the backyard. So it's a simple solution. why are plants toxic? That's another thing I only really started to look into recently. And it's because I'm going into a little bit more, going way back about plants. They're the basis of life on Earth. They convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. They convert the sun's energy into food. But they co-evolved with everything, wherever they are. My brother's in Sydney, Australia. The plants there co-evolved with certain insects and animals that became interdependent. And here, like as the plants develop defenses, toxicity, to stop everybody from eating them, certain animals evolved to be able to eat them. So you have monarchs with milkweed. You have, 250 other butterflies in our area whose caterpillars eat native plants that they co-evolved with. And that's how we have butterflies. If we stop growing native plants, we stop having butterflies. And what I didn't realize is if we stop having butterflies, we stop having baby birds, because that's primarily what they eat. 96% of them eat 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars in order to have like one nest of chickadees survive. So we have to think about, these plant defenses. And so when we talk about plant toxicity with dogs, it's just part of their defense system, but I wouldn't stop growing them. Like I said, front or backyard, somewhere out of the way. So the biggest converters of the sun's energy to food on the entire planet are caterpillars globally. And we use so many pesticides. We've done so much developing of the land. We have a very insect unfriendly way of doing agriculture. And so their numbers have plummeted. So we definitely want in our gardens to bring as many back as we can. So one more quick thing about that is on the left are all the native plants that feed the ecosystem. And on the right are all the red imported plants that do not, that basically starve the ecosystem. So most of our gardens are food deserts. Keystone plants are the native plants that have especially high numbers of things that are able to eat them. So oaks are one of the biggest. Willows are the biggest, but they require more water. So I usually don't promote oaks too much. But oaks, native cherries, our native currants, ceanothus, those all feed the ecosystem, and there's many more listed here. The red bars are things like acacia and agapanthus and eucalyptus that creatures here don't eat. And so they don't feed the ecosystem, but they feed the ecosystems where they came from. And the entire nation is planted with 40 million acres of lawn. It's actually increasing every day. You think in California here, we're going the other direction. And that's a huge food deficit. Like that's the biggest crop in America. And it doesn't feed humans and it doesn't feed the environment. So we just took ours out. When we realized this was a problem, it didn't take very long. So let's check out the plants that are safe for dogs, but also the ones that are the native plants that are going to boost our ecosystems. And you can go back to that other list. If you're growing other non-native plants, you've got that ASPCA list to refer to. So here's just a snapshot of some plants to avoid. We're going to go into each of these, and they have different reasons why we want to avoid them. The first are these fruits. California grape, or actually any type of grape, are toxic to dogs, as are raisins. And so the Rogers red variety of the California grape has beautiful red foliage. It can kind of take off on you, but I'm so stingy with water, mine's just kind of hanging on. So, it's, we reached a détente. California, the hollyleaf cherry is a beautiful tree, and it can be like a hedge. If you have a neighbor who you feel like you want a little more privacy, you can grow a big hedge of California cherry trees, and they're a hollyleaf cherry. They're really beautiful, but the fruit again is toxic to dogs, as are many stone fruits anyway. So you want to grow those away from your dogs, or train your dogs, not to eat them. Here's a sacred datura. You're more like to see this in a really dry garden environment, maybe even like in the Central Valley. But it's a beautiful plant, very lush looking when everything else looks dead. And it hosts like several sphinx moth. If you think about how big a sphinx moth is, that is quite a meal as a caterpillar for a baby bird. But this one's super toxic for dogs. So it's kind of at the top of that toxic list. So we're just avoiding that one entirely. Douglas iris, this is in our own garden in the spring. Love this plant, out of the way of the dogs. And it's really a tough plant. I mean, it's hard to kill. I've neglected them and forgotten to even hand water sometimes in a dry winter. The foliage remains green for much of the year. And it's really easy to divide and share these. So I love plants that are popular like that and you can share with your friends. This is another beautiful plant, a gorgeous tree that you see in the winter. You notice them because the branches are so bare and it's very architectural looking. So it's really ideal in a place where you want summer shade and you want the light to filter in winter when there's less light. It attracts all sorts of butterflies, and I believe it is I know it's a nectar plant for the Anise swallowtail, because we see them in our back ravine all the time, fluttering through there. But the seeds for this are toxic to dogs, so I would just say plant it away from where you have dogs. A silver lupin's another beautiful native plant, and you see it sometimes up in the hills, just blooming its heart out in the early spring. Pairs really beautifully with poppies. I know somebody on the garden tour has all sorts of poppies and lupins in her front yard, Elaine Salinger. But the seeds are very toxic, and so you don't want dogs browsing on these. Narrowleaf milkweed, saving the monarchs. You can still do it in a corner of your yard that's cordoned off from dogs, or that's just that they're not browsing the plants in, hopefully. And the monarchs, I don't know if you guys have been tracking, but the numbers have been going up and down, but there were literally tens of millions in the 60s and 70s when I was a child, and now they're really on the brink. So, but there's, again, 250 other butterflies we want to save as well, so in our region. Cow parsnip, this is such a stately plant. My friend has it all over her backyard, and it attracts all sorts of different insects and wildlife, and is used by lots of pollinators. It hosts the Anise swallowtail and the black swallowtail butterflies, and so you see their little caterpillars chomping on these leaves. So just grow it somewhere, again, where you don't have dogs. Awns, I never knew what they meant by that term. Awns are these kinds of grasses that have these little burrs they're kind of long and prickly like a foxtail. And dogs can get them in their fur, they can get them in their nose, they've required surgery. I've heard of dogs having to be put down because they got infected. It's very, very dangerous. So you want to avoid planting ornamental grasses. And there are many, many, I'm picking on the native ones right now because we're focusing on native plants, but there are hundreds of other grasses that we grow that have these kinds of, you just look at the picture of how prickly that thing is, and you want to avoid those. The good news is there are plants to grow in a dog-friendly garden, and they include many grasses as well. So strawberries are one of my favorites because they're a ground cover that just takes off, has nice runners. If you get too many, you just pick up some of those runners, give them to your friends, like a friend did for me. Just lay them out almost like irrigation piping and throw some dirt on them, and you've got a whole new patch. So we love strawberries. There's beach strawberry for sunny areas. It has more of a glossy leaf. And then there's woodland strawberry with more of a rugose leaf, they call it, that kind of rougher leaf pictured here. For shady areas, a friend gave me a whole bunch, and I was new to gardening and I didn't know what I was doing. So I put beach strawberry in the shade. It's doing great. So it's very forgiving. And here's Piper again demonstrating our patch of strawberry that's also buried in leaves, because we leave the leaves to protect the wildlife in the winter. And so that's all breaking down right now with the rains. And by the time the garden tour comes along, either the leaves will have broken down or we'll put some mulch over it and it will look fine. Here's serpentine sunflower, blooms profusely in the summer, and I see so many pollinators visit this plant. And there's a Milbert's tortoiseshell butterfly that its caterpillar eats the leaves of this plant. And then the birds come along in summer and eat the seed heads, and we'll chomp on those. Or if I leave the stems sitting there, I'm a very lazy gardener. The stems are there. Some varieties of bees will come bore a hole into sunflower stems, and the native bees are solitary. So they just make a nest with like several eggs in it with several batches of pollen. It's not a hive. So if we cut all that down and we're super tidy, they don't have a place to make a home. So I just leave the stems. This is a gorgeous plant in late fall. This is Epilobium, California fuchsia. It is glorious. And you drive through the neighborhoods. If you see this plant once, then you start to notice, and you can tell who the native gardeners are, because this is the sort of alert in August through December. Mine bloomed right up into Christmas. And the hummingbirds and the bees are all over this. So the hummingbirds, I'm going to plant more in my backyard because it's dog friendly, and because the hummingbirds in the front yard were fighting over it, and I want to spread it out and even get some neighbors to grow some. People do say that this can reseed easily, but if you're stingy with water, from having a big patch of it about the size of this table in my front yard, I only got 4 plants that actually took because there was so little water. So, I mean, my plants are doing great. They're big. They can get as big as me. But the little seedlings that they created, it wasn't any kind of invasive thing because there wasn't that much water. So I'd say if you do grow this and you see too many of them, cut back on the water. This is a great combination. A neighbor in San Carlos has this beautiful epilobium, and he has the deer grass in the background, and they alternate. So you have almost like this fireworks of the grass and then the hot red of the epilobium. I love coyote brush. I know that when you're driving down the freeway, you probably just see it in the landscape. That's how tough it is. No matter what the weather is, this plant survives. This is in a garden, so it gets a little bit of irrigation, not very much, and it's super resilient. Birds love to nest in these. It's dense, and if you plant several together, you get a little thicket going, and so you're more likely to have, I have tree nesting birds right now, and this would get me more bush nesting birds to grow this. And then there's low growing varieties. So you can either have one that's upright, like the one in this picture, or you can have one that's just mounding on the ground and that suppresses weeds as well. Oaks, they provide shade. They have soft leaves. So our dogs, some have prickly leaves, but our dogs really love our valley oak. Sheds all sorts of nice soft leaves. And then the dogs kind of rustle in the leaves and can sit in them. And it is one of the highest value plants for wildlife. So you have, I think it's over 240 varieties of butterflies and moths can eat the leaves, including the California sister butterfly. And you have the bonus of this great dog-friendly plant. Here's another one with a caveat. This is my friend's dog lounging in some coyote mint in her backyard. It makes a beautiful mound of purple blooming, long blooming flowers. I will say that, and it's fragrant. So if your dog rolls in it, they smell nice. They smell kind of minty. ASPCA says that mints are toxic, but they point out that they're mildly toxic and can cause some irritation if dogs eat large quantities of them. And so I'm including it on the yes list just because, with that caveat, because it's not really highly likely to cause a serious problem like the nightshade, like the sacred datura would do. Here's some native California buckwheats that I mentioned earlier. They come in more subtle colors than this. I just love the bright red, the bright yellow, but there's also like white and cream varieties. They grow in different sorts of, you can have more of a mounding one or ones with longer stems. They also feed a wide variety of pollinators. I told the group here earlier that I worked at the Primrose Way pollinator garden in Palo Alto for a while, and Juanita Salisbury, who created that garden, said that buckwheats, of all the plants that she grows, the hundreds that she grows, they're like a disco on a Saturday night when it comes to insects. The insects are all there. They're all partying down. They're all finding something. And then in the winter and fall and winter, the birds are eating the seeds. So it's a great year-round plant. Leave the seeds and feed the birds. So that's a really great plant. I had to throw in dog violet. It requires kind of a damp spot. And so in my garden, the damp spot I had wasn't quite damp enough. But I just for the name, I just had to include dog violet. It is really sweet smelling. It's a lovely fragrant plant. And I just love that this dog here happened to be flopped right next to one. So I had to throw that in there. But it does feed like silver spot and native fritillary butterflies. There's an imported one from Florida that we often see as a fritillary, but we have our native ones too. And they will eat, the caterpillars will eat the leaves. You won't notice any damage. It's like a little hole here, a little bite there, but you'll have beautiful butterflies in your garden. These are tough plants that can survive active dogs. And so there's low growing manzanitas that they can run through and it won't hurt the plant, won't break up the plant, probably won't hurt the dog's paws or anything. Sages are tough as well. What I really love about both of these plants, in a hot place in our front yard, we've planted these with very little water and they're evergreen. So we have a year-round evergreen backdrop. And then when it blooms, when each of them bloom at different times, the hummingbirds come through, the bees come through, everybody's using these. I've even seen butterflies use the nectar on the sage and land on it as a resting place. So anyway, those have those things in common. Here's my favorite grass, actually. It's called Mendocino reedgrass, or leafy reedgrass is another name for it. It does really well in dappled shade, and that's a lot of what I have on my premises. And the top picture is a picture from my own garden without it sort of blooming out, and the lower one's from the Woodside garden behind the library, Woodside Library Garden, with its beautiful seed heads. And when the light shines through those, it's just really a beautiful garden feature. And it's the host plant for the Arctic skipper, which I finally saw for the first time in my garden this past year. So that was nice to see that the caterpillars are eating it. I didn't even notice actually. And then they're surviving. Here's deer grass. That's a little bit bigger grass if you want more of a statement plant on the top, and somebody planted a little succession of them. I know someone who planted that amid some gravel, and the gravel's where the dogs do their business, but when people look at her garden, they see the big bunch grasses. So it just looks like an attractive area, not, a dog business area. And then below is one of my friend's favorite plants, blue grama grass. It's called blonde, I misspelled blonde, wouldn't you know it? Blonde ambition. And it looks like little eyelashes, looks like little blonde eyelashes. But it's soft, and it's something that the dogs they're not gonna, those little soft seeds don't get stuck in their fur or their noses. It's a very harmless plant. And you can also, with some of these grasses, not the deer grass, but with the grama grass, they can lay on it. You could be shorter than this. You could mow it a little shorter, cut a little shorter. They can lay down on it. Sometimes there are plants that aren't so cuddly for humans or dogs, but I love them anyway. And I have this one in my yard. So this is a fuchsia flowered gooseberry, and it's one of those really thorny plants. It really has beautiful blossoms like this. The hummingbirds love this plant. They visit it all the time. I'm going to grow more, but it serves as a barrier. If there's an area, some people I see complaining on next door or whatever, there's a dog marching through my garden again. We'll plant lots of this along your front walkway, not right on your walkway where people are going to get hurt or dogs are going to hurt, but as a deterrent. Somebody's not going to come into your yard or go into a place you don't want them if this plant is there. Going back to the primrose white pollinator gardens, I know that workmen were trampling through the garden, and they had a nice paved area to work on. And she just planted some of this around the paved area and protected the garden from any further trampling. And I thought that was a really good strategy. So that's one. Here's another plant that makes a nice barrier. I know a woman who's a veterinarian and has dogs. She's gardening with dogs, and she said she just cuts the seed heads for these and puts them in the areas where she doesn't want the dogs to go. And she's not trying to hurt anybody, but they go and they start to step on something prickly and they step back, and then they know, like, it sends a message, I'm not going to go back over there. It's a beautiful plant, I think. It's beautiful silver leaves. The hummingbirds and the bees love to rummage in these flowers. You see them come up and just like start digging for nectar. So they're really a beautiful plant, and they're easy to start from seed. So you just collect the seed heads and you can start from seed. We've used some rocks as barriers. These little low ones are more for like dogs like Piper next door, who might trample through some plants. But we put some bigger rocks around a new planting that my grandson did of a beautiful manzanita in the backyard. And that's worked really well. And we can move those rocks. They're not so huge that we can't move them when the plant gets bigger. And just another word about rocks, they're called Pammy pebbles. There's certain types of gravel and pebbles that are softer and rounder than like the hard, maybe the cheaper kind that have little hard edges. And so we use these pebbles in our garden. They make nice paths. They make nice areas around like our little water feature here. And then we also use smaller medium premium bark. And what that means is we're not using that shredded gorilla hair that you buy in a bag. We're getting stuff at Linkso, which I'll talk about in a second. It looks tidy, as you can see in the lower right picture. Probably last time we were getting our garden ready for the garden tour, nervously, tidying up. But it makes it's nice all around. And I just wanted to show how dogs can help you when you're sourcing your materials. We go over to Linkso, and the dogs come with, and they're so thrilled to be on an adventure. And you can either, scoop bags like that, or you can just pull up if you have a truck, and they can just dump soil amendments into your truck. And I don't mean to sound like an ad, but we really do love this company. And they're very generous in the community too. They supported a recent native plant conference that we did with Doug Tallamy, and they're very tuned into the different nonprofits in the community. So we love supporting them. They also have a really nice store inside that I didn't know for like 2 years until I happened to go in, and they have all sorts of, bakes and seeds and books. And anyway, it's a really nice store and demonstration garden area. So check those out. Putting it all together, I'm kind of circling back from where we saw that really nice architectural drawing of a garden to the one that I did myself. You can just get out a piece of paper, and I like some colored pencils, and sketch out what your garden looks like and what areas you might want to develop. You can kind of list the plants you're considering, either based on my talk or some books that you might look into. We didn't have the opportunity to hire a professional when we were first doing this during COVID, but we subsequently hired a professional to come out, just for an hour, tell us what we did right or wrong. It wasn't very expensive. And she was able to kind of point out some things. We made some big mistakes, like ceanothus doesn't like shade, but ours is blooming. She's like, leave it, it survived you, you know. So you'll get some really good advice and some really good ideas. You can spend a little more and they'll draw something really beautiful for you. You can spend a little more, they'll bring a whole crew out and plant it. So I don't know, as we get older, we might go that route next time. Bring someone out. So that's great. I wanted to point out that if you're looking for a professional, I included links here to people who work in our area or in the East Bay. So depending on who's hearing this, that they will at least know who to go to for native plant advice. One thing that we did too, I mentioned earlier, in the lower left of this diagram, this is where I'm going to use a special feature I've shown here that I can use. Ooh, highlight. This is the cafe garden. It's just tiny little space under a tree. My husband's window, the house is like at the bottom of the page, faces out onto it. And it was so easy to just take that one little space, develop that, and then we felt like we accomplished something every time we looked out the window. Then felt like we could tackle bigger areas. So none of it's very big. So yeah, that's another thing. Here's the example. Here's what it looks like. The cafe garden I mentioned, I just highlighted. Little space, little table. You can get one at Home Depot. And we have coffee berry planted there, and some heucheras. Those are dog friendly. Some hummingbird sage, that's dog friendly. I wasn't sure whether coffee berry is or not. This is a native coffee berry. It's not what you drink in the morning for coffee. The native coffee berry actually was called that by the early explorers. They thought it was coffee. The berries looked like coffee in Latin America, and it's actually a laxative. So I think they figured out it wasn't what they were looking for pretty quickly. So that's that. On the ground cover we have going is woodland strawberry. And here's another native garden that I saw on the garden tour. This is in the off season. So this is at the dormant time of year. You still have a lot of green. You have the different types of sages and manzanitas and coyote brush, all dog friendly plants. You have the different bunch grasses that don't have awns that are safe for dogs, like deer grass. And in the distance, you have the oaks. So there's some shady areas, and there's some areas with water features here. And then there's a nice porch where you can sit, a patio where you can sit in the shade. The dogs can run because there's lots of gravel paths, and they have a place to hang out and be protected from sun. These are some books that I use, and sadly, I'm in the process of moving right now, so I only was able to bring the California Wildlife Habitat Garden with me today. It's over on this table, along with a book about butterflies. But the California Plants for the Garden is considered like the seminal book about each plant and really understanding. It's like the Western Garden Book for native gardeners. And they have that outside, not for sale, but you can browse it. I will say that if you see it online really expensive, actually keep an eye out for the California Native Plant Society to have like a plant sale or something, and pick it up there because it'll be about a quarter of the cost. And I only know this because my husband bought it online, like a very damaged copy. And I'm like, we have 3 copies that I bought, less expensively. This top book though, Designing California Native Gardens, what I love about it is in my own garden, I have an area that's almost like chaparral. It's very exposed to the sun and needs those kinds of plants. I have a big oak tree that creates an oak woodland. And out back, I have a creek that creates a riparian area. And so I can look at this book and I can look up those different types of, they call them plant communities. And I can kind of tailor what I'm doing to suit the sun or shade or water or lack of water to my own small garden. And I don't know if that's how they intended the book to be used, because they're talking in broad brushstrokes, but I think it's a really great resource. And that one's easily available and affordable online. And then I love to explore more. So get out and look at, I have a link here to some books that I have found useful, but also nursery lists for the East Bay and for over here. I say San Mateo County area, Santa Clara County. Go to the native public gardens. There's some that are open year round, like the Woodside Library Garden, and you can see how a large area of mature plants. San Carlos's demonstration garden has different types of plants grouped by different areas, whether they benefit butterflies or hummingbirds or bees. And then this is such the perfect time of year. Get it on your calendars. April 5th and 6th, the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour is going to have a virtual tour. So you just go to their website and you sign up, and you'll get a link, and it's 2 whole days of people presenting online about their gardens and what they did, and all sorts of different, you can tune in, you can tune out, but it's a wonderful, wonderful virtual tour. And then the in-person tour, I believe it's one of the biggest in the state. They have 60 gardens on that tour, and there's a similar number on our side. I think it's 50 something this year, but go on these in-person tours. They're free. You get a map, you get the addresses, you get links you can look at right now on the website of what the gardens look like. So you can say, oh, I want to visit these 5 or 10 or whatever. You won't see all 60, but you'll try. So pack a lunch, pack some water. Like the first year we went, we're like, oh, where will we get lunch? And the second year, we're like, we're just bringing everything with us. We're getting over there right when it starts, and we're staying right till it ends. And then the same thing with the Growing Natives Garden Tour. That's Santa Clara, San Mateo counties, like all the way up past Hillsborough and all the way down past Gilroy. And each of them are Saturday and Sunday, so they can feature different regions. And we're on that one in San Carlos, as is the San Carlos native, native garden, the Master Gardener's Native Garden at the library. So anyway, I really highly recommend those. And then take action. Like if you want to build habitat and you want to see more butterflies and birds and bees in your own garden, and have your neighbors do the same, get your neighbors on board, share information with them, give them some seeds, give them some free plants, volunteer to help out a local native garden, invite people to visit your dog-friendly garden and see what you've done and get some ideas there, share your ideas with them. And then give a talk like this one if you get so inspired. It's not that hard. This is my grandson, Trey. Bring the kids along. That's another thing I'll add. And my friend Kathy is in the back kind of smiling to herself because she's one of the wildflower ambassadors who's volunteered on the tour at our house and has seen the boys just grow up with this. And they can't look at their phones when they're planting something in the ground. They're like, and I take them to nurseries and we pick out plants together, and I let them pick out plants and give them a little area that they want to put things in. So that's really made a difference. And then I actually pay them. I give out free seeds, which we have over here, and they sit and stuff seed packets for me. And so that's another thing. It feels like they're making a difference, and they feel empowered that they're making a difference. So I want to share just a few more resources. I mentioned Calscape. This is it's just calscape.org, and they have a place where you can just put in your zip code, and it will tell you exactly what plants grow naturally in your area. So what's native to right where you are. Those are the plants that are most likely to attract your local wildlife, and they're also the plants that are most likely to succeed. Like they're surviving in the wild on the water that they get. So in your garden, they're going to really do well. You can search for specific plants. So when I was putting this talk together, I didn't know much about Sacred Datura, so I looked it up on Calscape. And you can also, as you scroll down the page, don't just look at the plant in the description, scroll down and look at all the information, because it also talks about what other plants does it like to grow with, what plant communities it grows in, so you can kind of group things, but also who it feeds. You get down to the bottom, you see which butterflies, as caterpillars, use that as a host plant. So I live on Calscape. And then iNaturalist is another place that I live. iNaturalist, if you see a plant, you take a picture of a plant, you post it, the algorithm has a high likelihood of accurately identifying what the plant is, or at least what group it's in. And then other people weigh in on what you put the picture up of. So you get some expertise weighing in about your plants. I use this actually as a tool to look up different, and it's not just plants, it's also animals and other wildlife. I use it, on the left are the pictures I've taken and I've saved and I refer back to. And on the right are pictures that other people took that they've put up a license criteria that says anybody can use it for education for as long as they give credit. And that's how that helps me build my slides. I don't have to take all the pictures, I just can use them. So I find that really useful. And then there's a lot of projects there, citizen science projects, where you can just explore what's in your backyard and report it in, or be part of a group that's studying different types of wildlife and reporting in. So that's very cool. And then these are the resources that I found most useful and accurate about dog-friendly gardening. So I'm including those, and then please don't go blind. I also have all these other resources about native gardening in general. So some videos, some books, some other information, because when we started doing this, we had to figure it all out. And this list here took us about a year to figure out. So I just like to share that information so people get a jump on things. And If anybody needs the slides, there's a QR code, there's a link. And there's my favorite quote: never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So when people all pull together and try to build stronger ecosystems, it starts to have a great ripple effect. And where a couple years ago, you'd see a couple people show up online for a talk about native plants and birds. This past year, we had 800 people show up at a talk we did online with the East Bay group. So I really, I think it's starting to really take off. So anyway, questions, anybody? And any questions online, let me know if you see some.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
What kind of gravel were you using for the walkway?
Yeah, we were using what's called Pammy pebbles. And if you go to Linkso, they have these bins, and somebody there will help you
I
too.
know the bins. What is the
Yeah,
name?
it's PAMI. Yeah, they're not inexpensive. I love using the double negative like that. And they have different sizes. I think we use like the 3/4 inch, but you can also like feel them, like what feels right for your garden. We surprisingly, we haven't had a lot of them just sink into the ground and disappear. That's another thing that some people worry about. But we have a lot of clay, and so we just kind of literally like trenched out the clay, dumped some gravel in it. We probably refresh superficially. We don't do like a full refresh. We get a couple bags and go over it right before the garden tour, because like everybody's coming to see your garden. So yeah, those are great. And then the premium medium bark is what Juanita Salisbury was using at the Primrose Way Garden, and I really like how it works in her habitat. And she has a lot of wildlife. Her whole thing is feeding the bees, feeding the native birds and butterflies and everything. So I really followed a lot of what she did too. So yeah.
You mentioned the San Carlos native garden.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to share with you my experience, because I went there and I
Yeah.
was rather discouraged because
Oh.
they didn't look great. And I
Oh.
went back another time
Oh.
when Master Gardeners were there. And
Yes.
they did point out that garden is on top of the garage. And so it doesn't have soil.
Oh, it's not very deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just as a warning.
Oh,
So if
good
you go
point.
there and say, oh, I don't think I want to do this.
Yeah.
Just remember
And time of year, you point out that time of year matters too.
and the fact that the roots can't get all the
Really
soil
deep.
in
That's a
the
really good point.
backyard.
I never, now you say it, I can picture that that isn't going to go very deep. The Woodside, I most often go to the Woodside Library Garden because it's the most, they have the deep soil, it's the most naturalistic, and it's a large piece of land. And so they have different, like, here's sort of a damp area, here's a redwood area, here's a grassland, here's an oak woodland. They've kind of made these different sort of garden rooms. And so different times of year. In fact, get over there early April and see the dogwoods blooming, because it makes this wall of just, looks like a Gustav Klimt painting, just this beautiful wall of all these flowers. And right after that, the mock orange, that's also a beautiful flowering native shrub, that comes in, and it's just gorgeous. It's like, and it's like higher than this room. It's really tall. And so I love to do a lot of, the last talk I did here about year-round gardening, a lot of the plants were featured from that garden, because I go back there different times of the year and I see different things. So yeah.
I noticed you had a beautiful stone that was carved out as a bird bath. Is it okay for dogs and birds to share? Because that looked like the dogs might get into it
drink
also.
in it. And actually, it's right now with all of the different bird diseases that are flying around literally. I'm just really careful about that. I just have them drink out of their dog bowl, and they're on the leash in the front yard, and that's where we have that type of. We realized in our garden that the crows didn't have a bath, and they're part of the ecosystem. So we both saw that at Linkso, and we both eyed it, but it was expensive. We didn't say anything to each other, and then we both were like, you know that rock? And it's funny because I've never really been into diamonds. And I remember somebody saying to me, we got married, oh, you'll get a diamond, you'll get your rock someday. And it's so funny because we joke, that's the rock. I don't need to wear it. But that had to come in on a forklift. And it's funny because we were surprised. We went to Linkso and we talked about the price. The guy goes, yeah, we each had a number in mind. And he goes, yeah, $650. We're like, oh, that's less than we thought it would be. He goes, plus 200 to bring it, or whatever it was. It wanted to be like, we were both right on the money as far as it's not inexpensive, but we did all the other stuff ourselves. So we saved money and then we spent money. So we love that feature though. It really pulls a lot of the elements together. It's a really nice feature to have. And I hope any subsequent owners of the house like it. Yeah, were there other questions or?
I got a question.
Yeah,
The fuchsia gooseberry,
yeah.
does it keep deer away? Do deer go through
I
it?
don't notice that because, we started doing something where we started leaving the leaves and leaving the acorns. And the first year we did it, it was really uncomfortable because you wind up with like oak leaves like this. And what happened was the oak leaves broke down and insects started to break down the acorns and deer started to eat the acorns and all the other animals, they were all eating the acorns. And we didn't notice as much browsing on our plants. And I know that's a very seasonal thing, but we haven't had a lot of browsing. And I know we do have deer in our neighborhood. And they did used to come through. We had some little lemon trees, and every time they got new growth, the deers would just chomp them down to the stubs. So yeah, we haven't had a problem, but I imagine it would be a deterrent. And those thorns, I got one once. When you get a thorn from a gooseberry, you will never do it again because you'll be super careful. I mulch heavily underneath it. I hardly ever have to weed under it. And if I do weed under it, maybe once a year, I go in with gloves and, do what I have to do. But it's such a gorgeous plant. And the hummingbirds literally just flock to it. It's blooming right now. So this is a time when not a ton of stuff is blooming. Manzanitas are blooming now. So anyway, it's really fun. Yeah.
How do you break down oak leaves?
I don't. I let the water in a rainy year do it, but we're not having that year right now.
Like,
So
that's pretty good.
I know. Like I said, it was really uncomfortable. The first year we did it, we're like, what's going to happen? And then I started going out in the heavy, heavy rains, and you see all sorts of things growing on them, like little yellow bubbly molds and white sort of just weird things growing on them, which the boys, my grandsons, find fascinating. So they're out there taking pictures. But then it all breaks down, and what we wind up with, we used to have really heavy clay under there. Now, if you reach, it's really like layers and layers of that nice forest kind of rich leaf mold. Yeah, leaf mold. Thank you. I was reaching for that word. And we used to have ivy under there, and a little piece of ivy will pop up now and then. And if I pull on it, it just comes right out because its roots can't hold on to anything. So it's really, my husband and I are both like, we don't get out in the garden and weed as often as we'd like to, and we really don't have much of a problem with the leaves and the mulch.
You don't have weeds.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, well, I just really appreciate everybody coming. If you have more questions, or if you want, I brought a pollinator mix. I realized as I was bringing it, it has lupin seeds in it. So it's not, I wouldn't plant it in an area where I have dogs, but it's a beautiful mix and it has perennials. And the perennials this time of year, you can plant them either in pots or in an area that you keep watered. Normally, most native plants, you want to plant them in the fall and capitalize on the rains. So we're kind of at the end of that season. Hopefully today gave me some hope. Maybe we'll get some more rain.
I don't know if we have time, but I was wondering, you showed some gorgeous pictures earlier on in your slides. If you could name some of those plants.
Oh yeah. Oh, I think. Whoops.
Oh.
I might be closed. Well, the big pictures with all the plants at once wound up being the plants that I one by one went through. So that might be what you're thinking. Well, that makes it easy. You can just pick the.
Oh, no, that's not it. I think it closed. That's what. Yeah.
Oh.
You're right.
Would hollyhocks be a native plant?
They're not a native plant, but you know
They
what?
grow so easily.
Yes, and there are many plants that grow easily. And the other thing people often turn to is like Australian native plants. And the problem with any of those is, first off, Australian native plants, my brother lives in Sydney, he gets some summer rain. We don't. So his plants over there adapted to summer rain. Ours didn't. If I start watering my native garden, especially my manzanitas in the summer, they might develop some kind of a pathogen. Something will get activated in the soil because it's not normal. So
Hollyhocks will just grow with no water.
right. Yeah. There are a lot of plants like that. There are a lot of plants like that. They just don't necessarily feed anything. So if you're trying to grow butterflies, if you don't want your local butterflies to go extinct, or you want birds in your garden, then we want insects. So that's
Insects go to the hollyhocks.
I don't think so. I don't know. I know,
I grew a lot of them. And
yeah.
The bees do.
I would think that
Bees
they
will
have
use a lot of different things, yeah. Yeah, the imported honeybees will use a lot of different things. Even the native bees will use some things that aren't native, but it's healthier to go with the, yeah. You're gonna have like those little tiny red numbers if you're not feeding the environment in terms of having butterflies or birds in your yard versus the green numbers from the native plants. So those bars that I was showing earlier, those are the big boost.
And I remember from the last talk that you gave, and that's kind of stuck with me. You
Mhm.
said, like, you have all these, the non-natives, and the bees will come, insects come,
Right,
but then they don't have anywhere to lay their eggs.
Right.
Because they do not lay
Right.
their eggs on the non-natives.
right, especially like the butterflies, the different Lepidoptera, they can't. So I used to have delphiniums and all sorts of Centranthus rubra. I had all these plants in my yard, and I'd see the butterflies come through, but I never saw a caterpillar because they can't. Like a monarch can't lay its eggs on anything but milkweed. So if you're not growing that thing, so there's multiply that times 250. I'm trying to, in my yard right now, I'm like planting all the things. Right now I'm having the greatest success with coffeeberry. Coffeeberry is a nice evergreen mounding. It can be really large. It can be small. Mine's in shade. It's doing fine. And I see lots of little bites in the leaves. And that tells me it's feeding something that's feeding a bird. So I have all the birds are eating all those caterpillars. And somebody online freaked out because she grew a native apricot mallow last year and something just ate it all. And I went in my backyard. I'm like, oh, my apricot mallow is kind of around that corner. And I went and mine was completely eaten. And if that happens with milkweed, everybody runs out and buys more milkweed to feed more caterpillars. And this person's like, I need to get rid of these pests. And I'm like, no, I'll buy you some more apricot mallow so you get more food for the birds. And the chickadees that were nesting nearby, I saw them constantly going over there and getting those caterpillars to feed their babies. And my daughter lived in a place where she had chickadees and they had a nest fail. And we didn't know about all this native plant stuff at the time. And we didn't know why those baby birds didn't make it. And then now we look back and there was nothing for them to eat. There was no caterpillars in the yard, so they didn't survive. So, and a sad note. Okay, something cheerful.
That's a basic question.
Yeah.
For succulents, are there California native succulents where
There's
the
a-
flowers come and
yeah.
help with the?
Yeah, there's a Dudleya that's native to here. I think there's several succulents. The succulents are generally more native in Southern California, and you can certainly grow them here. You just might, I don't know, because I haven't really grown very many, so I don't know what kind of results you'd see. There's a beautiful little blue butterfly, though, that does eat the Dudleya. I can't remember which specific one.
I'll look it up.
But yeah, but
Just one more question.
yeah, I was going to try to find where the pretty pictures were. Was it the big bunch of pictures like
I
that?
brought it to that.
Oh no.
I think we passed it. That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Go down and just.
It was the big wall of pictures, though. Okay, because the big wall of pictures was just all of these, but just stuck on one page. Ah,
I'll take a look.
yes, download the slides. We'll come back to that. Sorry, everyone's feeling busy now.
Yeah, so you've seen those fried egg plants? You see them on the
Oh
highway?
yeah.
That's native?
Those are native. Yeah, that's a mahia poppy. I'm probably not saying it right, but that is native. They can't kind of take off, but my neighbor has them very nicely managed in her front yard. So they're really
Are
beautiful.
they dog friendly kind?
I don't know, and I don't think I saw them on that ASPCA list, which really skews toward non-native plants for the most part. Yeah, so yeah, those are native. Take some seeds if you like them. It's a wildflower mix that has perennials, so you'll get some lupin and some gum plant, which is a nice hardy plant. Spread them out like bigger than this table and water them in and just kind of on a surface, like just press them in, because if they go too deep, then they don't germinate with the sunshine. And if they just rest on the soil surface, birds might eat them. So anyway, so feel free to take some of those. I brought a couple of handouts. Oh, I meant to just share about a couple of plants here. Are we still?
Yeah, we have time.
Yeah, I know you said till 2:30, but I will just show you on camera, or if people left online.
They're still on.
Oh,
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna talk about this is a yarrow plant, and this, let's see, this yarrow can make a really nice mat if you mow it, or you can let some big tall flower stalks come up. That's really popular with pollinators. Dogs can lay down on it. I think they're not supposed to browse it, so I don't know if you want to, you want to manage the dogs if they're in a place where you're growing yarrow. But there's a yellow variety that's European or imported. This one's white, probably. So we have that. This is one of my favorite trees. I had mentioned the buckeye tree with its pods that are poisonous to dogs. I will tell you, if you are growing a garden not for dogs or in a non-dog area, this is one of the easiest plants to ever start. You just put one of those big pods in some soil and they shoot right out of the ground, and they get big like this within, like, I'm going to say a month or two. So for kids, like, this would be such a gratifying plant to grow. And then my grandson fell in love with one in a nursery we were at. He photographed up through the branches of it and all the blooms on it and all the little blue butterflies that were fluttering around. And so it's really, I love the plant, but not for dogs. And then this is a sage. So they said sages are fine for dogs. And there are native sages and non-native sages. And so it's really nice if you look up on Calscape and figure out what the native sages are if you're going to grow sage. I have one that I started about this size, about 2-3 years ago. It's as big as this table now. And it's evergreen, and I neglect it, and I forget to water that corner of the yard. It's really great. And it feeds this little caterpillar. It's called a wavy lined emerald moth. It's a beautiful green moth, but the caterpillar actually goes to different flowers and it pulls off little bits of the flower and it camouflages itself. And so if you look at a plant, you would never see it. I looked it up on iNaturalist. It took me 100 pictures to find one that had like fallen on some wood, and you could actually see the caterpillar because they always take the color of whatever plant they're eating and they just completely disguise themselves. So it's a little fun fact. But anyway, these are all in the nursery. These are all for sale right now in the nursery. How late does your sale go? Till 3?
Yeah, our nursery is open till 3. There's a native plants area, and all of the plants in the orange brown pots are natives. And then the other day we were visiting Wegmans, and they have a great native plants area as well. It's a little bit at the back, but they've got really good plants.
Yeah, and if you drive a little further, Summer Winds has expanded its native plant section too. It's pretty big, and that's where I got my tall pots too. So. And if you ask what days Judith is there, Judith is an evangelist for native plants. And she says people bring in their garden designs and she's like, oh no, don't do that there, do this here. So she does some little ad hoc advice. It's pretty generous of her. So, but I often also go to the East Bay. I list some nurseries on my handout, but we'll just get in the truck and we'll head over to East Bay Wilds. If it's a Friday, they're only open on Fridays. We go to Oaktown in Berkeley. We go up to Watershed up in Richmond, which is like the Costco of native plants. It's huge. So anyway, I recommend getting over there and seeing some of those.
And a plug-in for supporting the local nurseries, because they know what plants do well here and bring in those.
Good point. That's a really good point. All right, great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Well, thank you for coming and sharing this really important information with us, and thank you for petting Peggy. She's had a really nice time wandering around.
Oh, that's a nice touch.
So the next event is going to be in April on organic spring summer vegetable gardening. And then in May, there's going to be petals and pixels capturing nature's beauty. And then of course there's going to be the Master Gardeners Clinic every week, and plant sales here with good prices. If we could kindly have the evaluation forms back, that would be really helpful for our next planning our next seminars. Well, the seminars are over. Thank you so much. She has Jennifer had all these lovely.
Take a packet of free seeds. Absolutely.